It's been a while since I've done commentary videos, so I thought I'd do one. And today's topic that we will be discussing on is, drumroll please, does anime have well-written female characters? I know there has been a lot of discussion regarding this topic and I thought I'd add my opinion into it as well. I'll be analyzing some of the most popular anime and I'll break down the female characters' writing and I'll be analyzing their motivations as well. So if you're interested, keep watching. Also, before I get started on the video, I just want to say that I'll be talking about some of these characters in depth as well as the plot, so I might end up spoiling a lot of things. So if you don't want the anime that you're currently watching to be spoiled, you can just skip ahead and I'll be timestamping the videos. Anime is infamous for its representation of women, and especially shonen anime. So what is shonen anime? Shonen anime is the anime that's geared towards boys in their early teens, and it's one of the most popular genres in anime. In fact, the most common names such as like Naruto, One Piece, Bleach all belong to this category. To give you a basic idea of what shonen is like, let me explain to you what the protagonist is like. The protagonist is usually a boy in between the age of 14 to 17. He is ambitious, he has a strong sense of justice, he's not afraid to fight for what he believes in. Usually the protagonist starts off as the underdog, he is physically weak, but as the series progresses, he undergoes rigorous training and he ends up becoming one of the strongest characters in the series. Along the way, he not only strengthens in his physical ability, but he also emotionally matures and strengthens the core values that he holds. Some examples of shonen boys that fit this narrative would be Tetsuya Kuroko from Kuroko no Basket, Tanjiro Kamado from Demon Slayer, and Naruto Uzumaki from Naruto. Now you're gonna be like, okay, what's the issue with this? It seems like a good plot, and you're right, it is. Who doesn't love seeing the characters that they root for attain the goals that they set at the start of the series? Seeing the character developments, the hype fights is something that can be enjoyed all across the board, regardless of gender. My issue lies with the writing of the female leads in the series. A lot of the time, the female characters are present in the series to serve three purposes. One, to be the love interest of the protagonist. Two, to be the damsel in distress so that the protagonist has someone to say when the story is not interesting. And three, everyone's favorite, fan service. Their existence in the story doesn't add or subtract to the plot. They don't seem to have any motives or a fully fleshed out personality. And even if they do, it's all tied back to a male in the show. So let me explain this further with an example. Let's take Kuroko no Basket. Kuroko no Basket is a sports anime about high school basketball team that's trying to make it to the top. We follow along the protagonist Tetsuya Kuroko, who is a former member of the Generation of Miracles. Now, the Generation of Miracles was a group of basketball prodigies who eventually became the best in Tokyo. As they enter high school, all the members are scattered across different high schools and they have to face each other during the basketball tournaments. And the character that I want to discuss is Satsuki Momoi. Satsuki Momoi was previously the manager of the Generation of Miracles, and as the group split up, she decided to attend to academy with a former member, Awomine Daiki. One of her first appearances takes place when the team Seren, Kuroko's team, is practicing in the pool. She claims to be Kuroko's girlfriend, but in reality she's just like deeply infatuated by him. I guess this is supposed to be a funny thing where like a super hot girl is obsessing over a guy who doesn't fit the attractive stereotype. It's a very common trope in anime that the love is often one-sided and the girl forces herself onto him. I never got the point of this. I've seen a lot of reasoning being like, shonen does not focus on romance, or the 14-year-old boys who are watching this are not interested in romance. And my question is, why introduce the love interest at all? If the focus was just on like the fight or the tournament aspect, they could have easily avoided the romance. But they've decided to introduce a character who is clearly a product of the male gaze. I don't want to be using the term male gaze because it's so overused, but it's so fitting in this aspect. Like, take a look at Momoi's design. She is a 16-year-old girl who has a fully developed female body, and the angle in which she's drawn or animated in clearly sexualizes her. So you're telling me the 14-year-old boys don't want to watch romance, but they're okay seeing a hypersexual girl obsess over a guy and constantly get rejected. Hypersexualization of women, especially children in anime, is like a whole different video in and of itself. So I just want to focus on the romance aspect here. I don't believe that developing romance in shonen is gonna take away from the main story. A romance is just one aspect of a person. It doesn't have to be the main and central focus, but it adds a layer to the character. The viewers get to see a different side to the protagonist and his love interest, and I think that just adds to the story, not subtracts. Another thing I find an issue with is Momoe's motive in the story. She says that she chose the academy not because she wanted to, but because she had to keep an eye on Daiki so that he doesn't get into trouble. I know this is supposed to create like a wholesome relationship between them, and don't get me wrong, it is. It's very nice to see like the dynamic between them, and it's also nice to see like a motherly side to Momoe. Most of her reasoning for her actions isn't for herself, it's for someone else, and that's the part I have an issue with. Something else to note is that Momoe's ability is to analyze the opponent team's previous matches and predict their future moves, which the players can directly use in the game. She says that it's easy for her because men are too predictable. I don't have to say why that statement is so problematic. Firstly, it's ignorant and puts like a whole gender into one box. Secondly, it has like the same implication as all men are trash, and it's condescending and ignorant. Let's compare it to Kuroko's ability for a second. Kuroko's ability is to draw attention away from him and misdirect the line of sight while he passes the ball. It's explained that he's able to do so because the main focus in the court is the ball. So if he doesn't hold the ball too long and passes it quickly, he doesn't draw any attention towards himself and thus misdirects his opponents. There's a lot more thought put into his abilities. Granted that he is the main character in the show, and of course they will have a lot of thought put into their writing, but even a lot of side characters have better writing than Momoe. Some of the examples are like Captain Hyuga and Vice Captain Izuki. Not all characters need to be well written, but it's frustrating to see that one of the very few female characters in this show have such little effort put into them. I know I'm overanalyzing like a turn off your brain and watch sports anime, but there's a reason behind it. It's not really frustrating as a female viewer to see such one dimensionality in characters that are essentially supposed to represent you, but also because of the impact that it leaves on the boys. The target audience is boys in their early teens, so essentially there are boys who are growing up watching this thinking that this is all there is to a woman because of such inaccurate portrayal in one of the biggest medias that they consume. Another infamous example of an anime that does this is Fairy Tail. It's one of the first anime that I ever watched, but Lord does it do its women so dirty. So what happens in Fairy Tail? In brief, the world of Fairy Tail consists of guilds that are home to a lot of wizards and mages. They take up a lot of job requests that include quests, slaying, and a lot of adventure. The series starts off with us being welcomed into the world of Fairy Tail along with our female protagonist, Lucy Heart Failure. Now, this is where my issue with this anime starts. Lucy Heart Failure is a mage whose quirk is that she summons the 12 zodiacs to fight for her, and she does this so by attaining their keys. But her magic is always made into a joke because either her spirits refuse to listen to her or they're just incompetent. To make matters worse, she's almost always clad in scanty clothing or somehow ends up losing her clothing in the process. For example, in the arc of the Eclipse Portal, a serious fight was happening. Like the guild collectively was trying to fight a dragon, and this dragon magically strips away Lucy's clothing. He says that he's gonna eat her and the clothes get in the way of it because they taste bad. Keeping the fan service aside, Fairy Tail's story arcs don't do Lucy any justice. Anytime there's a filler arc, Lucy gets kidnapped and the rest of the guild comes to save her. For example, in the Phantom Lord arc, Lucy ends up getting kidnapped twice and loses her keys in the process, leaving her completely helpless. Don't get me wrong, Lucy eventually does power up and is able to kick ass like everybody else, but that only happens in the final season, which is so annoying and unfair for her. I hate how in the entire series she's either a damsel in distress or a subject to fan service. But don't worry, not all hope is lost. Things are not as grim and grey as it seems for women in shonen anime. Kuroko no Basket and Fairy Tail were part of second generation anime that was released in early 2000s, and since then anime has come so far. The recent shonen such as Attack on Titan and Jujutsu Kaisen have such well written and fleshed out female characters. So let's talk about them. Attack on Titan is set in a world where humanity is forced to live in cities that are surrounded by three enormous walls that protect them from man-eating humanoids called Titans. Eren Yeager, our lead protagonist, vows to end all Titans after losing his home and his mother's life to the Titans. Attack on Titan is one of the best anime out there by far because of its world building and plot development. But what holds it together is its compelling characters. Every single character introduced in Attack on Titan is well fleshed out and have their own motives and system of beliefs. And the women in Attack on Titan don't fall short. Historia, Mikasa, Hanji, and Ymir are some of the women who are quite literally the strongest catalyst in driving and changing the direction of the plot. Let's talk about Hanji. When Hanji Zoe first appeared in the anime, she was shown as cheery, eccentric, and for some reason obsessed with the Titans. But as the story progresses, you get to see Hanji in depth and you get to see the reason as to why she joined the Survey Corps. She not only can switch between funny and serious in an instant, but she's also quick-witted and can think ahead. She isn't afraid to fight and cares deeply about her fellow soldiers. Okay, not only that, because of her extensive research and interest to learn about the Titans, she has helped the Survey Corps numerous times. From figuring out that the walls are made of Titans, strategically planning every single Survey Corps attack, to making inventions such as the Thunder Sphere and Guillotine, her contributions are undeniable. She's not only a good soldier, but she's also compassionate and highly receptive. One good example of this will be when she found out that Mikasa was trying to steal the Titan injection from Levi to save Armin. Hanji holds back Mikasa, trying to comfort her by saying that she also wishes to bring back people, but we all have to say goodbye someday, and she insists that Mikasa move forward. Hanji also isn't afraid to be vulnerable. One of the good examples would be of the time she confided in Burner by saying that she is afraid of terror, but her curiosity towards the Titans and concern for loved ones is much greater. As the series progresses, you notice a change in her behavior where her cheeriness wears off and she takes on a serious nature. As her responsibility of the commander grew, Hanji starts to show very raw human emotions such as stress, exhaustion, and self-doubt. Hanji is such a well-written character. Each time she's on screen, you get to learn a new side to her. She's such a complex character with many layers to her. I can go on talking forever about the AOT girls, but I'll save that for a different video. And finally, let's finish it off with Jujutsu Kaisen's Nobara Kugisaki. The story of Jujutsu Kaisen is set in a world where the cursed spirits feed off unsuspecting humans. Thankfully, there exists a school of Jujutsu sorcerers who protect the unsuspecting humans from the supernatural world. Now let's talk about Nobara. Nobara was from a small town, and in this small town she had a friend who she idolized. This friend was from the city, and because of which she was ostracized and forced out of the neighborhood. This caused Nobara to hate the narrow-minded and uptight climate of the town and desperately wanted to move to the city. Before attending Jujutsu High, she promised her friend that she would reunite with her someday. At first, when Nobara was introduced into the show, she seemed like every other shonen girl. She was aggressive and she would fight with Itadori, the lead protagonist, all the time. But quickly you figure out that Nobara doesn't fit the shonen girl archetype. Nobara shows that you can like stereotypically female things without falling into the stereotype. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Nobara likes things like shopping and dressing up, and it's an important part of her personality trait. But it's not derived from the fact that she's a woman. It's derived from her individualism. She doesn't care about labels like masculinity and femininity, and she just does things that makes her happy. Nobara knows her worth and stays true to herself no matter what. She takes pride in the fact that she can dress pretty and fight strong. You can see that her confidence doesn't come from comparing herself to other women and placing herself above them, but it comes from something within. One of the reasons that I feel that she's such a well-written character is that her personality is not shaped around her gender. It's solely defined by the value that she brings to the story. At the same time, it doesn't feel like they've picked a strong male character and placed a female skin on it. She is a woman and she does things that are stereotypically feminine, but she isn't doing it for a superficial purpose like a one-dimensional love interest. She's just doing it because that's who she is and that's true to herself. She is just authentically herself, and that's enough to make an interesting female lead. seen characters like us show that you can adhere to the shonen girl stereotype, but you can still have depth and layer as a character. The stereotype shouldn't be your only quirk. You can be the protagonist's love interest, at the same time have your own motives, ideals, persona, and actions that are truly based on your decision making abilities. Done right, the same shonen girl stereotype can invoke something in the audience regardless of the gender. And this is what I believe is one of the most important aspects of media. Ultimately, I know that shonen is geared towards boys, but it doesn't have to write its female characters so poorly. You can always have a strong female lead because it only adds to the story. Jujutsu Kaisen and Attack on Titan are proofs of that. Ultimately, gender is just one aspect of a person, but if it's integrated correctly into the media that we consume, it can add so much depth and layer into the characters and the story, and thus making the overall experience so much more enjoyable for everyone who's viewing it. And that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, share, subscribe, comment. I really want to hear your opinion on this video because I spent a lot of time scripting it and it's something that I'm really passionate about. And I hope I was able to get my point across without stating things that's too controversial, but things that need to be heard. With that being said, I hope I see you guys in the next video. Until then, bye!